So it's middle of summer now, and people are probably starting to ramp up shooting their bows, getting ready for this upcoming season, getting ready for fall. And one thing we notice, like almost every time we see people shooting, like say on a hunting commercial, TV show, Instagram clip, people are just slapping the heck out of their triggers, and it's not a good shooting habit. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about punching the trigger, how it can relate to target panic, and we have a lot of good tips on how you can break this really bad habit and become a better archer.
So the first question is I'm shooting good enough right now. What's the point of me fixing target panic? And I can tell you firsthand, I was probably one of the world's most
renowned.
The world's most renowned trigger puncher. I developed a really bad habit. It allowed me to shoot well off and on, I'd say, between 20 and 30 yards when I was shooting when I was growing up. The issue is once you start stepping back to further distances, and even when you're hunting in the field, you have
Especially when you're hunting.
Right, you have a bad habit. You don't have any control of the trigger. So if that animal just takes one step forward while you're in that slapping mode, it can totally be the difference between, having a good hit and going 20 yards to having a rodeo of a hit and not finding the deer and wounding the deer. So it's a really big deal that if you fix now, I promise you is going to make not only your archery better, it's going to be more fun, but also you're going to be a lot more accomplished bow hunter in the field.
Yeah, that's a big deal too, especially in the hunting scenario like we just talked about. There's going to be a lot of people watching this video that are going to have experienced this. You know that feeling where you get drawn back on an animal. Maybe it's the first time you've drawn back and that's when you experienced it, or maybe you're an experienced archer and you still get it sometimes. You black out and you're freaking out, right? It's buck fever. It's hard to control, okay? It happens to the best archers. You can shoot a perfect 3D score and then go out in the field and have this happen to you. And you draw back on an animal, and what do? You don't even pick a pin. You just put all the pins close and you call it good.
Which pin did you use? All of them?
All of them. And then you slap the trigger. And it's happened to Heidi. She had that fear where she just couldn't put her finger in front of the trigger without slapping it.
And that's where this idea really came from. Not only those videos, but helping her try to overcome those boundaries as well, is where we kind of thought of these drills and these techniques.
And that definitely kind of plays into the whole idea of target panic. And it's a pretty popular term now, but there might be some people that aren't familiar with it. And basically it's just the idea of when you're shooting a command style and you're actively pulling the trigger, eventually, and this is actually another interesting thing about slapping the trigger and punching the trigger, is traditionally the more you shoot, the better you should get. But if you're a trigger puncher, the more you shoot, the worse you're gonna get, almost guaranteed, and that's not how it should be. You should be constantly improving when you're shooting your bow. But what happens is your mind, you don't really know what's going on, but your mind, the pin, as soon as it hits that dot, it knows that something violent happens. You shoot your bow, everything releases, it's kind of violent, it's loud, and over time, your brain starts to panic whenever the sight lines up with that dot or whatever you're shooting at, sorry about that, your brain panics and then you go haywire. It can affect people different ways. It can be you just can't hold the pin on the dot and actually aim, or it can be you can't even hardly hold your bow back because you're just freaking out on the inside. You don't even know what's going on.
That was an issue that we saw with Heidi. That was something that we actually was like, how do we fix this? It was very severe, and there is cases where that hits that. And I will add to that too is, when you have a bad habit and you just keep shooting and you're like, I'll get through it.
Yep.
That's probably one of the worst things you can do, because it just makes it worse and worse. And your body gets so used to steps. Like when you're walking, your body has, in its mind, it knows exactly how it needs to walk. It knows exactly how you shoot your bow right now. Your mind knows exactly how everything goes. So like you were talking, when that pin hits that spot, it wants to just shoot as fast as it can. And there's some different drills you can do for target panic in general.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Practice is good, but one thing we learned in wrestling in high school was perfect practice makes perfect, not just practice makes perfect. So when you're practicing, you want to be addressing these habits, and we're going to show you how to do that. But we wanted to mention target panic in there quick to kind of explain what it is and how it's really connected to punching the trigger, because it develops when you get that trigger punching habit. If you can always have a surprise release or tame it, then you won't develop target panic.
So first, I want to touch on a little bit on different releases, and these are releases that we've used over the years. And what I've found to be kind of an issue to starting target panic is most people start out on a release like this. This is actually your release that you started using. It's very similar to something that I used when I first started out into archery, and this is the release I actually let Heidi use this when she started using. And the problem with this style release is it's a roller release, so you barely tap it and it just goes off. So I think that's where a lot of it starts, is people start with the wrong release. And I'm not going out and I'm going to say go buy $300 hinge release. I'm not going to go and say go ahead and buy yourself a $300 hinge release just to fix the issue right now, because I feel like there's a lot to be done before you just go spend $300 to $500 on some of these hinges. I don't want to recommend people just spend money.
Yeah, I think it could maybe help get over a bad habit, but like you said, it's a lot of money, and there's other ways that you can do it. So
Right.
You don't have to, and that's just not something we're really interested in a hunting scenario. So we'd rather fix the problem with the release that you're going to be shooting. It
Right.
might be a little bit harder at first, but you can get it if you follow the drills.
Now, Hunter actually started shooting a thumb button release for some time, but I remember you had an issue where you kept sending this whole release through the through the bow, and last I checked, this is not a good weapon to kill a deer
not a
hunter.
projectile.
So, and it's a good release. There's probably a lot of guys who are using a release like this. It's a hard trigger to pull, and that's my next point.
Well, you can adjust it.
You can adjust. Okay, I didn't know that. But that was kind of my next point is, since I had severe target panic and Heidi did, the first thing that I did when I started is I upgraded to the Scott Rhino XT. I don't even think they make this thing anymore. This is an antique at this point
Vintage.
now, right? But I started shooting this, and it was a much stiffer trigger, and that allowed me to not be able to just punch it. I think a lot of the issue with trigger punching comes from people not trusting this trigger right here. Now, there's people like Dad who shoot something like this, and I've watched him, he has no fear of putting his finger on that trigger. But me personally, it was this mental block. So although I told you not to spend $300 on a different release, you might want to upgrade to something, another index style trigger that has a little bit harder pull. We got Heidi the Spot Hog Wise Guy for that reason, to help her calm that issue. And that, with these drills that I'm about to talk about, really helped. But I must admit, the best thing you can do is possibly put down this release unless you really, really want to work at it, because it's just such a light trigger that if you breathe on it, your mind gets to a point where it's like, if I breathe on this trigger, it's going to fire, right? So I think that's where a lot of issues stem from in the beginning.
Yeah, and sometimes people will start with like I don't know, I think True Glow or some of those like springy ones.
I had that one.
It might not be a bad thing, because they're actually going to require you to pull a little bit
through.
more. So it's like the crisp triggers are marketed as being the best, and maybe they are. A long-term trigger travel could eventually start to screw up things with your mind too, but it's probably better than a hair trigger that you can't even put your finger on. So, you can always stick with what you have, is kind of my point there.
Right. So some of the drills that you can do, and it's going to sound very elementary, but what I'm going to tell you guys, no matter which release that you do, I'm going to advise you to not shoot your bow for a while. And that might be hard to hear, and a lot of people might just click off of this, but you need to start from the base up. Grab yourself a pair of headphones, a string or something, and start just when you're hanging out at night, it's 9:30, you're watching TV, you're watching this video, grab your release every night and just start getting comfortable, putting your finger on the trigger, holding it there, making your mind understand that, okay, this isn't too bad. This isn't something, because my mind personally got into it like, do not touch that trigger. It is scary, right? It's going to go off. You're going to screw up big time. And then you can start progressing into grabbing something where you can hook it, like this one. You hook it. You get comfortable just putting your finger above the trigger. You get comfortable squeezing through, start understanding, okay, this is it's not going to go off that easy. And from there forward, it's just very baby step. You don't touch your bow for a while. Then maybe you...
And do that constantly. Just squeeze the trigger. Slow, squeeze.
Right.
You're going to be... One thing you brought up when we were just talking about this was, this is how you're going to shoot a rifle too, or any sort of gun. You want to be able to squeeze the trigger, so it's not a bad habit just to know.
Right, and that was kind of my point of, I don't want to just tell you guys go spend $300 on a thumb or another different style, because we're not just bow hunters only, right? There's a lot of guys who are rifle hunters too, and this is my personal opinion is most people can shoot their bow more times a week than you can get to a rifle range and shoot. So you might as well be able to figure out how to fix it on this style of trigger with your bow if you're a dual hunter, and then move forward that way. So this is a really great thing just to be able to get comfortable in this position. Even if you don't switch release, this allows you to go, okay, this is an old release, but here's what I can do. I need to get comfortable here, right? And you just start breaking that mental block. Now, obviously, I will preface this: do not draw your bow do not draw your bow with your finger in front of the trigger. Always make sure it's behind.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that, good. Keep doing that. So always make sure your finger is behind the trigger when you draw, and then you need to get comfortable with, okay, I got to set my finger in front of the trigger in order to get ready to start my shot process, not just to shoot. So you can start practicing it there and know when you can start squeezing. Okay, so get comfortable there. From there, what I recommend people do is they start blind bale shooting. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. There's two different ways that you can do this. One which we talked about is you close your eyes, and that can really start to make yourself focus. You start yourself about a couple yards away from the target. You're level with the target, and you just shoot with your eyes closed, and you're focusing on squeezing the trigger. You're focusing on what you've been practicing on for the last week or so, and really start hammering it home. From there, take your sight off. It's not going to mess with anything. The sight and the dots from the sight and the pins are what is going to really instill that target panic. You're going to start freaking out more again. So take your sight off, just baby step it here, trust me, and that's going to make it so you're starting to shoot with your eyes open. When your eyes are open, you're starting to be more, hey, this is getting more realistic.
Yeah.
From there, put your sight on and do the same thing. You're a couple yards from the target. You're just shooting here. It's going to seem very elementary, and I keep saying that. But
shoot at maybe it's just a huge dot that you're aiming at too.
Right. Don't focus on your pin.
Yeah.
Right. And then from there, you can start backing up. Okay. You can start focusing on a spot and picking that spot. But do these steps elementary, and they'll seem ungodly slow. But trust me, do it, because if you do not fix it, if you have like, okay, I've got this down. Oh, I screwed that one up a little bit. You just go back to square one. So just fix it now. You'll be happy you did later on. As you start progressing further back when you're shooting, this is kind of a target panic drill that we started doing just while we were shooting, is you get through with your shot process, you're focusing on your pin, get your finger in front of the trigger, and what you're going to do is you're not going to let yourself shoot. Your brain's going to tell you, hey, I need to shoot, hey, I need to shoot, hey, I need to shoot. You just fight it. You're just like, nope. And then
you're actively aiming, but you're telling yourself, I'm going to wait 5 seconds before I'm going to even try to start squeezing. You're making your mind hold the pin on the dot.
So the final drill was one that I think helped Heidi the most.
You came up with this too. I've never heard of this.
I've never heard of it. It just kind of came to me while we were shooting. But what I noticed was she would draw back, she put her bow on her pin on the target, and you get to a point where it's like, my pin's there and I just got locked in, I need to shoot. So then she would start to really, her mind would do that mental, we need to get going, we need to shoot as fast as we can. So what I did is you need a target that has a bunch of different dots on it. Say, a block has multiple dots, right? 6 dots there. You tell that person, you have a buddy, a friend, your wife, your spouse, whatever. You draw your bow back and you aim for that center dot every single time. And once that person sees that you're anchored and you're settled in and you're ready to rock, they'll tell you which dot to shoot. So they'll say top left, for instance. From there, you have to go and mentally, because your mind is telling yourself, I need to shoot this center dot, but they're telling you shoot this other dot. And what you'll find is you might actually, when they say something, you'll shoot because your mind's like, whoa.
If you have bad target panic, for sure.
Right. But this also teaches you that the target's constantly possibly going to be moving. Wherever you draw back your bow on an animal, deer move, elk move,
It's an awesome drill.
All these animals move. So what you're going to do is you have to draw back and you get to a point, oh, my target's moved, I need to go there. And then you have to learn how to stop again and start your process over again. So it's a very good drill to help reinstill all the things that you've picked up on. It's not something that I would say, hey, do this first, but it's a really good target panic or target trigger punching drill that you can do at home that's going to allow you to break these habits and really get into like the bow hunting mind, because targets just sit there, right? You got to be able to move and be able to control your mind to say, hey, there's a branch in the way, we can't shoot. And if you can't do that, that's how you have more issues and more losses of deer or whatever you're hunting.
Seems simple, but I guarantee you, if you look at the overall population of bow hunters, I bet at least 25% of people, probably closer to 50, couldn't actively make that decision. If they're at full draw and the animal moves or a branch is in the way, they cannot physically make that. Tell themselves to take their finger off the trigger and don't shoot. I mean, it is that big of a deal.
Or just be able to tell themselves, hey, I'm okay with my finger in front of the trigger. I'm not going to shoot yet. I need to wait.
Right.
So those are just a few things that you can do. And if you guys have any more questions about any of these, or if you have any...
Let's give them one more bonus. I want to talk about how to actually squeeze the trigger and make the shot sequence happen.
Okay.
So I don't want to be too long because this could be a whole other topic, but you've probably heard of back tension, or if you haven't, look it up. But back tension is a good way to basically make a surprise release happen and get around all of this stuff. Basically, you won't be punching the trigger and it'll help not develop target panic. That's what back tension can do for you. The deal with back tension is you're pulling through your back, you're basically pulling through the shot with a hinge, a thumb release, or you can do even an index finger release. And that's going to help you break these bad habits, and like I said, but basically all it is you're pulling on the trigger, whatever kind of trigger it may be, or you're letting the hinge rotate. You're just pulling through the shot instead of actually moving your finger. So that's one way you can do this and get a surprise release. You'll have to, like I said, this is another video topic almost, so you'll have to research how to do it. But basically, if you want to do it with an index finger, you're going to be basically put a fixed amount of pressure on the trigger and then just slowly pull through, and you're going to find that the shot's going to break. And I think it's a good arsenal thing to have in your toolbox. You want to be able to shoot both ways, and it's going to be able to help you continue to shoot more. Really good skill to have. For a hunting scenario, I like to do a little bit of a modification of that. I like to command shoot. I mean, back tension works. It can work good, but I do also like to be in complete control. And if you do these drills, it's not going to be a problem. It's going to be okay. So I mean, that's the other thing you can do, is just actually do these drills and just focus on squeezing the trigger like you do on a rifle. So good to have both methods, but just thought I'd throw that in there. One last thing at the end here.
Good point. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to cop them in the comments box below. If you guys have any other questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the comments section below. We read all of our comments, and we'll make sure to try to help wherever we can. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button if it helped, and smash that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and helps YouTube not hate us as much. So,
yeah.